Welcome back to the shop. I got a fun project today. So then you're probably asking, hey John, you make knives. Why do you have Swiss Army knives? And I'll tell you why. Because to me, I think of these more as a toolkit than I do a knife. Yeah, I mean, they have knife blades on them. But, it's just, it's a toolbox in your pocket. I use these little pliers all the time. In fact, I tried carrying a Leatherman for years, off and on. Different Leathermans, and I say Leathermans, different multi-tools. I tried a bunch of different brands. Leatherman Wave was my favorite, carried it for years. But I'll be honest with you, I almost never say, wow, you know what I need right now? A big, heavy, clunky, honking set of needle nose pliers. I just don't. I need, I need to bend little pieces of metal. I need to, if I'm doing some kind of little job where my fingers just can't get it done, like bending a little piece of spring steel when I'm out and about, these little pliers are lifesavers. Love them. Of course, the general stuff, flat blade screwdriver. It's honestly an excellent pry tool. Same as the can opener. Now, not many of us running around opening cans with our pocket knife, but let me tell you something. This little guy here turns out to be a handy dandy. It looks like a flat blade, but that fits most number 2 Phillips on the planet. And if that's not strong enough to get it, if I think I'm going to twist that tip off, well, then I have my dedicated Phillips. But it's so much easier to turn things this way. And there are a number of Swiss Army knives that have the inline Phillips. Believe it or not, one of the most excellent ways to use this is actually as a package opener. And if you follow Felix Emler on YouTube, that guy is the MacGyver of Swiss Army knives. So from him, I learned I cut that out with a Dremel and sharpened it. And now it's an awesome hook tool for opening packages, boxes, you name it. This edge here is a fantastic pry tool. In fact, that's how I got these old scales off of these knives. All you have to do, because that's a thin edge, is stick it up under stuff and pop them right off. But anyway, not here to sell you Swiss Army knives, but I love these things. I worked for years and years in industrial automation as a controls guy, and let me tell you something. Again, I tried carrying Leathermans for years and years, and I always came back to the Swiss Army knife. I prefer a knife kind of form factor versus a big giant pair of pliers. And I guess that's because I'm a knife guy, but I love these things. What this knife is, this is the Deluxe Tinker. I absolutely love this knife. But there were times when, if I'm camping or canoeing, actually out in the yard, doing different kinds of stuff. The one thing that this knife doesn't have, that this one does, is the saw. Now the saw, let me pull it out for you here. Oh, in fact, here's one right here. But the saw is extremely handy. That's a great little saw. Are you going to go cut lumber with it? No, I have real tools for that, But rather than leave my favorite knife home to carry a knife that had a saw, I went and bought an old knackered out version of this knife on eBay for, I don't know, I think I paid 15 bucks for it. And I'm going to take this saw layer and I'm going to add it to my knife. But guess what? It turns out that this guy right here, help if I turned it on. Look at that. 70 thousandths. Even the back spring is only about 70 thousandths, and if you put it with the liner that you're going to need, you're only at about 97 thousandths, less than 100 thousandths, which sounds huge until you measure it out on your caliper here, and you realize that that's tiny, right? This is a 3/32 pin punch, which is about 90 thousandths. So that's the thickness that you're gonna add to this knife. If that bothers you, then it bothers you. It ain't gonna bother me. And it's gonna give me everything that I could possibly want in a pocket toolkit. I don't need a metal file on a day-to-day basis. If I do, I'll go to my toolbox. But this has everything I really want to have in my pocket every day. So that's what I'm going to do. Let's see. What layer am I going to add this? We're going to have to remove that one entirely and then just grind these heads out of the center without damaging those little bushings or collars, whatever you want to call them. Let's do final assembly on this Deluxe Tinker. I have it laid out the way that I'm going to assemble it, the way that the layers go together. I've already started with the first layer. I didn't do this one on camera because this one takes 3 hands. But my bottom layer here, which is the can opener and the screwdriver and the awl, that's my base layer. And then we'll progress through the knife. We're going to assemble this. Keep bumping the camera, sorry about that. So this was my original knife, plus this layer. What we're adding is the saw blade layer. And in the knives that have a saw, Victorinox puts the saw right next to the main blade. I played around with the order of these layers, and I kind of wanted it more in the middle. The problem is the pliers here have this big rivet for a pivot. And so the internal liners are relieved for that pivot. So these 2 liners have to be on each side of the pliers. And from there, the way it all worked out is it was just neater to keep it in the order that Victorinox does, because then you end up with this nice flush layer. So there is a method to their madness. Oops. This was the liner that came with this layer, and this knife was kind of crusty and nasty. So I ended up just taking some sandpaper and cleaning that up, making sure that it's nice and flat. Because when you get little giblets stuck in there and you don't clean them off, and you go to put it together, you'll end up with gaps you can't get rid of. So get things nice and clean and flat. Nobody's gonna see it, but So it's not really for looks, but it's to knock off little high spots and whatever else. Oops.
Put it in the right way. Put it upside down. Gotta make sure you don't do that.
There we have it. Our Deluxe Tinker with a saw. I like it. What I'm going to do is to put the collars on and peen these pins with it in the jig, because the way I made this jig, the pins don't go all the way through. You see that? So this actually serves as an anvil. So when I'm peening the pins on this side, it can't drift out this way. It can't run away from me while I'm peening it. Then once this side's peened, that access hole allows me to push this knife off of the jig, and then I'll come back and put the collars on this side and peen it. All right, so we finished this up last night. Here's the donor knife. And as you can see, I removed the saw from it. So it's still got the typical stuff, plus the scissors, right? And I want to say that this is now officially a climber, but I'm not even going to put scales back on this. I'm going to use this as basically a parts knife for any other mods that I want to do to any other knives. But this is what I carry every day. This is I look at it as a multi-tool. It has knife blades on it, but that's not why I carry it. I didn't realize how much I wanted a saw until I had this knife. And then I decided that, you know, every time I needed one, I went and got this knife and carried this around. Well, now it's part of my permanent tool kit. Then, of course, the blades. I love this knife. And looking at the overall thickness of it, it was already a little bit thicker than this, because you can see just how thick the pliers are. That's where most of the thickness in a Deluxe Tinker comes from. So adding the saw only added, you know, like 100 thousandths to it, which I showed you last night. Basically, it added the thickness of this pin punch to the knife. That's the other thing with these two. If you're like me, you absolutely hate throwing a knife in your pocket and it goes into your pocket this way and it ends up laying this way across your leg at the bottom of your pocket, and you have to try to dig in and fish it out. This little guy here is a game changer. Throw that guy on there, and then this clips into your pocket and hangs vertically in your pocket the way that you want to, instead of coming down and falling down this way. You can get like 2 of these for, I don't know, I can't even remember what I paid for them. I think $8 or something like that. And there's several different versions of them. Love this thing. And then, pro tip, stroke it across a magnet a couple times and magnetize it so that when you're working with your knife, it stays out of your way. All right, so thanks for following along. I hope this has been somewhat helpful. So thank you very much.